Ethan had always been the center of attention. His striking features were hard to miss: dark brown hair, deep-set eyes, and a strong jawline that seemed to define the perfect image of a handsome young man. But despite his looks, he hated the constant attention he received, especially from girls. He often wondered why people couldn't see past his appearance and get to know him for who he truly was. It wasn't that he was vain. In fact, he felt burdened by his attractiveness. Everywhere he went, girls would stop to stare, compliment him, or approach him, and it got exhausting. The constant attention felt like a weight he could never shake off. One day, in a burst of frustration, Ethan decided to do something radical. He would wear a helmet. He reasoned that if people couldn't see his face, they couldn't be drawn to him. It seemed like a ridiculous idea, but it was a plan. Anything to escape the overwhelming gaze of others. The next morning, Ethan found himself standing in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the helmet on his head. It was a sleek black motorcycle helmet, designed to shield his face completely. He couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. But as he stepped outside and locked the door behind him, he couldn't ignore the wave of nervous excitement rushing through him. At first, it worked. People didn't immediately recognize him, and for the first time in a long while, he felt free. No one stared at him with admiration or desire. But as he walked through the town square, people began to notice the peculiar sight of a handsome young man strolling around in a helmet. They started whispering, taking pictures, and soon, Ethan was the topic of conversation. He overheard one group of girls giggling. "Is that Ethan? What's up with the helmet?" A chill ran down his spine. The attention hadn't disappeared. It had simply transformed into something even more bizarre. He sighed, wondering if he'd ever find peace. As the days passed, Ethan realized that his helmet was attracting even more attention than he'd hoped. People no longer saw him as just another attractive guy. They saw him as a walking mystery. Strangers would approach him in the street, asking if he was the guy with the helmet or offering unsolicited theories about why he wore it. Some even tried to take selfies with him, as if he were some kind of celebrity. It didn't help when his social media following exploded. He went from a few hundred followers to thousands, all fascinated by the helmeted mystery man. Ethan found himself becoming more and more isolated. Even in public places like the coffee shop or the park, people would approach him, trying to figure out who he was and why he wore the helmet. It was supposed to help him escape attention, but it only made things worse. He felt like he was trapped in a bizarre experiment, where the more he tried to avoid attention, the more people were drawn to him. One day, after a particularly exhausting encounter with a group of curious teens, Ethan retreated to the park to clear his head. He sat on a bench, hoping for some peace, when a voice broke the silence. "Is that really you?" Ethan turned, surprised to see Sophie. She was a quiet, unassuming girl from his high school, someone who never seemed to notice his looks in the way others did. She had always been different, reserved, kind, and entirely uninterested in the social drama that consumed the rest of their peers. Sophie smiled, as if seeing him in the helmet made perfect sense. I think it's pretty cool that you wear that. Most people would have a meltdown if they had to hide their face, but you seem to own it." Ethan was taken aback by her calmness. "I don't really have a choice anymore. People just won't leave me alone," he admitted, feeling a sense of relief that someone finally understood. As the days passed, Sophie and Ethan started spending more time together. At first, it was small talk, nothing serious. But soon, their conversations turned deeper. Sophie didn't care about Ethan's looks. She cared about the person he was beneath the surface. She didn't treat him like some object of fascination, and that was something Ethan had never experienced before. Sophie also had her own story of wanting to avoid attention. As a talented artist, she often found herself overshadowed by more outgoing personalities at school. People never seemed to take her seriously because she wasn't loud or brash like the others. But Ethan, for the first time, understood her struggle. They both lived in a world that judged them for how they appeared on the outside. One day, Sophie asked, "Why do you wear the helmet, really?" Ethan hesitated. "I guess. I just wanted to feel normal. I got tired of being judged for how I looked. It was like people never bothered to look past the surface." Sophie smiled gently. "You don't have to hide yourself to be normal. You're already perfect just the way you are." Sophie challenged Ethan to go a day without his helmet. She believed that he didn't need to hide behind it to be accepted. Ethan, still feeling unsure, reluctantly agreed. The next day, he met Sophie in the park, helmet in hand, and for the first time in months, he walked without it. The world felt different, lighter somehow. He could feel the air against his face, the sunlight on his skin. It was a strange, freeing sensation, but there was also a nagging anxiety in his chest. Would people stare? Would they judge him? To his surprise, no one seemed to pay much attention. The people he passed didn't look twice. Some even smiled at him, acknowledging him as just another person. Ethan felt like he was experiencing life for the first time, not as a spectacle, but as someone who simply existed. Over the next week, Ethan began leaving his helmet at home. He started to notice the subtle shift in his life. Without the helmet, people were still drawn to him, but it wasn't the same. They didn't judge him for his looks. They just saw him as another person. The more he lived without his helmet, the more he realized something important. His appearance didn't define him. The helmet had been a shield, not from others, but from his own insecurities. By hiding behind it, he had been avoiding the one thing that mattered the most, being himself. Just when things seemed to be settling into a new routine, a group of girls from his school approached him. They had been following his helmeted persona for weeks, and now, they were curious to meet the real Ethan. At first, they laughed, making light of his previous obsession with the helmet. "You used to be so weird with that thing on. What's it like being normal now?" One of them asked. Ethan chuckled, unbothered by their comments. "I guess I'm still figuring it out," he replied. It felt so liberating to not care about their judgment. For the first time, he felt free, not just from the helmet, but from the constant pressure of being perfect. Ethan and Sophie continued to grow closer. He no longer felt the need to wear the helmet, not because he was trying to prove anything, but because he had finally accepted himself for who he was. He wasn't defined by his looks or the attention he received. He was just Ethan, a person with flaws, dreams, and a heart full of potential. The most shocking thing about the whole experience wasn't that wearing the helmet had worked. It was the freedom he found when he stopped hiding. By embracing who he was, flaws and all, he discovered that true peace didn't come from avoiding attention, but from accepting himself. Sophie stood by him throughout this journey, not because he was handsome or because of the helmet, but because she saw the real Ethan, and she liked what she saw. The helmet had been his way of hiding, but now, Ethan was ready to live fully and authentically. Free from the chains of his own insecurities, as time went on, Ethan began to feel more comfortable in his own skin. The helmet had become a distant memory, a relic of a past version of himself. But as much as he had embraced the freedom of living without it, doubts still lingered in the back of his mind. One evening, as he walked with Sophie through a crowded shopping mall, he saw a group of girls staring at him. For a moment, he felt that old rush of anxiety. Would they talk about his looks? Would they approach him like they always did before? Sophie noticed his discomfort and nudged him. "Hey, are you okay?" Ethan hesitated. "Yeah, just thinking." Sophie smiled knowingly. "You've come a long way, Ethan. Don't let a few stares set you back. You're more than just your looks. Remember that." Her words resonated with him. He had come so far, and he wasn't going to let old fears rule him. He smiled back at her, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. A few weeks later, Ethan ran into his ex-girlfriend, Chloe, at a party. They had dated briefly during high school, and though their relationship had ended on amicable terms, Chloe had always been one of those girls who had been captivated by his looks. Seeing her again made him realize just how far he'd come. "Wow, Ethan, you look different," Chloe said, her eyes scanning him up and down. She seemed genuinely surprised, but also intrigued. "You're not wearing the helmet anymore?" Ethan laughed, a bit self-consciously. "No, I'm done with that phase." Chloe looked at him curiously. "I always thought you were so perfect. But now you seem more real." It was a strange compliment, but it hit Ethan harder than he expected. Chloe had always been attracted to his looks, but now, seeing her face to face, he realized that the version of himself that he had tried so hard to hide, the one behind the helmet, was the real Ethan. And he wasn't going to change for anyone, not even for her. As Ethan's relationship with Sophie deepened, he began to trust her with parts of himself that he had never shared with anyone before. He told her about his fears, his past insecurities, and the reasons why he had worn the helmet in the first place. One evening, as they sat on a park bench, Sophie turned to him, her expression serious. "Ethan, I've been thinking, you've come a long way in such a short time. But I want to know, what's the next step for you? Where do you go from here?" Ethan thought about her question long and hard. "I think the next step is to stop worrying about what everyone else thinks. I've spent so much of my life trying to hide, trying to be someone I'm not, and I'm tired of it. I'm ready to live authentically." Sophie nodded, her eyes soft with pride. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. As the months went by, Ethan found that his old life, filled with constant attention and judgment, began to feel like a distant memory. He had stopped seeking validation from others, and he no longer cared about the fleeting opinions of strangers. He was focused on the relationships that truly mattered, his friendship with Sophie and the deep connection they had formed. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Sophie's apartment, watching the sunset, Ethan turned to her. I think it's time to fully let go of my past, to stop holding on to those old habits and fears. Sophie smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. You've already done that, Ethan. You're not the same person you were before. You've let go of the things that were holding you back. Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle within him. It was true. He had let go of his insecurities, his need for external validation, and the idea that he had to be someone he wasn't. He was free. Ethan's life had completely transformed. No longer burdened by the expectations of others or the need to wear a helmet to hide himself, he embraced every aspect of who he was, flaws and all. His relationship with Sophie blossomed into something deeper and more meaningful. They supported each other through their respective journeys, understanding each other in a way no one else could. As the months passed, Ethan found himself more content than he had ever been. He had discovered that the true freedom came not from avoiding attention or hiding behind a facade, but from being able to live authentically in the moment without fear. One day, as he walked through the town square, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. People still looked at him, some with admiration, others with curiosity. But it didn't matter anymore. He wasn't defined by his looks or the attention he received. He was defined by who he was on the inside, and that was all that mattered. Sophie, still by his side, smiled at him. You look happy. Ethan grinned. I am. I think I finally found myself. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan knew that he had.